Let's do this.
It's showtime.
You're listening to the Thoughts of a Blog Queen podcast.
These are just my thoughts.
With your host, E.R.A.
A woman, her thoughts, and a mic.
Are you ready? Check this out.
Hey you guys, welcome back to another entry 43 to be exact, of Thoughts of a Blog Queen podcast. I am your host, E.R.A, also known as Blog Queen. Thank you guys for tuning in. Happy Self-Care Sunday if you are tuning in when this episode actually dropped, because you guys could have been doing anything and you decided to take a moment to tune in with your girl, and I appreciate that. So before we get started on this entry, as you guys can see by the title, we are doing another blog breakdown. But before we do that, you guys know the routine. I'm going to take a few minutes, not even a few minutes, just a couple of seconds to pour into you and to give you our dose of self-love for today. So let's get into that. A beautiful unfoldment occurs when we let go of what could be and embrace what is. Connecting, not attaching to what is and not what could be. It is the self-love in the present moment, not the future, that solidifies this connection. Did y'all catch that? It is the self-love in the present moment, not the future, that solidifies this connection. So this passage is encouraging you to live in this moment and worry about your self-love in this moment. Worry about what you're doing for yourself now. Worry about how you're taking care of yourself now. Not to say, and don't take that literally, but just take it as it is. Not to say that you shouldn't worry about your future self and things in the future, but you really want to focus on the here and the now, right? Because you need to be living fully. You need to be living wholly, and you need to be doing that right now. You don't know, none of us know, what the next day will bring, what the next week will look like, what the next month will come about. We just don't know any of those things, and so it's just very important to make sure that we're doing everything that we can to embrace ourselves and to promote self-love. So I thought that was a really great passage. I don't know, something about how something happens when we let go of what could be and embrace what is, because we're always just, we want to know what's to come, and we're looking forward to things, and we want to know when the next great thing is going to happen, and we want to know when the next great relationship is going to come into our lives, and we're going to know when the next great job offer is going to come, or when the next great brand deal is going to come, and we often don't embrace everything that's going on right now. So that's something that I just wanted to encourage. All right. So anyways, hey y'all, welcome back. It has been a little minute. And we're doing a blog breakdown. Y'all know, okay, so welcome to anyone who has not tuned in to Thoughts of a Blog Queen before today. Welcome. I hope you kick off your shoes, relax your feet, and stay a while. I enjoy doing the blog breakdowns, and if you're unfamiliar, a blog breakdown means that if you check those little description notes in the podcast that you're listening to, check the show notes, there's going to be a link to a written blog that will pair very well with this entry. And in fact, I have that blog in front of me, and I'm pretty much going through, I'm reading that blog, but I'm adding context, I'm adding emotion, I'm doing a little bit of ad-libbing, but I'm just trying to get you guys in my head and where I was going when I wrote this. This is part 3 to a 5-part series going into her solo season. So the entire 40s of these entry, we're in number 43. So all the way to 49, we will be doing the solo series, the solo season series. If you're not sure what that is, I encourage you guys to go back a couple of episodes and check it out. The blog, there's going to be 5 blogs to this, but there's obviously going to be more podcast entries than blogs. But this is a 5-part blog series. We're on part 3, and we're talking about the title of this is The End of an Unsuccessful Era. E.R.A. This is part 3. Go back and check out the last one was the signs of that you might need to go into your solo season, and prior to that, I believe it was why you may need to go into one. Just why, in general, the overall idea of what the solo season is and why you might need to go into one. Then the next part, we're talking about the signs that you might need one. And then part 3, here we are, we've arrived. We're talking about something very specific that we can acknowledge, right? Because one of the things that we want to do in our solo season is we want to do the work. We want to do the self-work. We want to focus on the things that we need to do. We want to focus on how we can be just a better version of ourselves. That's what it's about, right? It's the intentional work that we're going to do on ourselves. We're prioritizing us, right? Because sometimes we forget to do that. We're so busy with work. We're so busy with kids. We're so busy with partners. We're so busy with creating. We're so busy with just all of the things that we have to do in the world. Sometimes because it's us, we feel like we can put us like kind of on the back burner a little bit, right? We don't focus so much. It's kind of like, well, it's just me. I'll address that when I have the time. So going into your solo season is the intentional time that you're taking to do that. To focus on yourself, to work on the things, to go within, and just to kind of touch on different areas of our life that need nurturing. And that is not just going within. That could be physically too. We're doing all of the work, right? So you may have been neglecting yourself physically. You may have not been eating the best. You may have not been as active as you want to be. And so going into your solo season might look like you starting to incorporate some workouts into your daily routine for a specific amount of time, or just trying to make it a permanent thing that you do in your life. You may do some hiking, you may do some walking around the neighborhood, you may do some yoga, you may do just whatever it is. You may invest in a piece of equipment for home if you feel like you can't get to the gym because you just know that you want to work on your body a little bit more. So whatever you need to do for you, it's not one dimensional. It's just whatever that you need to work on for yourself. That's what we're working on. That's what we're focusing on. And one of the things that I feel like is important for us to work on is just how we process things mentally, right? That's very, very important. And just in talking about social media and just in general, we've heard a lot about the soft girl era, right? Everybody wants to be in the soft girl era. Everybody wants to be in my bag era. Everybody wants to be they're trying to, and that's just a social media type of way of talking about a lifestyle that you want to manifest, right? You want to manifest a certain type of lifestyle. That's the era that you're trying to be in. But one era that I thought that we are consistently operating in is the ego, resentment, and attitude era. And that is an era that some of us need to end. We don't need to try to manifest that. We need to end it, right? So as we continue in the solo season, I thought that it would just be very relevant for us to talk about that. Again, we're talking about letting go of ego, resentment, and attitude. Some of us are here. We're comfortable here. This is comfort for us. That ego, that's comfort. That attitude, that resentment, that's comfort. The attitude, that's comfort. But honestly, that's not helping us a whole lot. So that's what we want to talk about. Grab your tea. I don't have tea today. I actually just have some cold water. I am going to do some bedtime tea. So I decided not to drink any during the day. But I hope that you guys have something, or that you're doing something. If you're tuned in on Self-Care Sunday, you might not be. It might be Monday. You might be at your desk listening, whatever. I would just appreciate the download. Because listen, before we get into it, let's talk about the downloads. Listen, the downloads are there. The girls are listening. Y'all are listening. Y'all are tuned in. I see it. I'm checking my numbers. And as of I believe the last time I checked the numbers for July, New York popped in my top 3. And I don't recall seeing New York up there. I think my home state, which is South Carolina, was in there, has consistently been in there. Shout out to the people who are in my city that are tuned in. And then I believe it was Florida again. Florida has been in my top 3 states for a minute. And I believe it was New York. I have to double check that, but I don't think that I've seen New York in my top 3 states. So shout out to whoever is downloading out in New York. Hello, welcome. I don't know how I managed to get within your radar, but I'm grateful. I'm not even going to question it. I'm just grateful. So anyways, let's focus. Let's talk about why we're here. We're talking about ego, resentment, and attitude. Now, this entry, we're going to be transparent in this entry, and there is going to be a call to action in this entry. What is the call to action? Self-awareness. So it is within my hopes that we're going to hold ourselves accountable. And I say we, I always say we. This is not a you thing. This is a we thing. This is for me too. We're going through this together, but we're holding ourselves accountable. And I think that is going to be a very effective tactic for us to grow in our solo season. All right. Again, I talked about it in the last post, in the last entry, the signs that it may be time for a solo season, that you want to take just an overall look at the things that you need to work on. Be honest with yourself. Always be honest with yourself. It's you, right? Just be honest about what you know that you need to work on. And I think that when we're talking about ego, we're talking about resentment, and we're talking about attitude, I think that those are 3 things that are very, they show up. They definitely show up. And oftentimes some of the decisions that we make turn out to be, and if we determine that those decisions that we make, they don't serve us really well, they didn't turn out the way that we needed them to turn out, a lot of times it's because we may have been operating in ego, resentment, and or attitude when we were making those decisions. Ego being very, very, very relevant, which is why I wanted to start there. So let's get into it, you guys. Let's talk about ego. If you are in the blog, we are at the first part. This is elevation over ego. I named that section that part because we want to elevate. We always want to elevate, right? And we want that over, we'll take that over ego any day. Hopefully that's the mindset, right? Because when we operate in ego, it will lead us astray. It will lead us astray. We get so warped in self-importance and our independence that it's very possible that we miss how our egos have actually held us back from achieving a certain level of growth in connections to other people, the relationships that we have. And a very important relationship that we're talking about now is the relationship with ourselves. And that's in whatever season that we're in, not just a solo season, but just whenever, right? One sign of you operating in your ego is being overly prideful. Okay? Overly prideful. Raise your hand if you have had, I don't want to call it trouble, but if being too prideful has been a thing, raise your hand. Both my hands are raised. I'm gonna keep it real. I am an extremely prideful human being. And as much as I want to blame that on being a Leo, because that's what they say about Leos, I'm not even going to go there. I'm not even going to take it to the zodiac because there's no excuse for that, right? It's who we are. But I don't think it's always all bad. I think that sometimes there's a need to be prideful, but I don't think that it needs to be something that you consider comfortable. You shouldn't be comfortable being prideful. Prideful should be something that you I want to say that you have to utilize in certain situations, right? But I recognize how it doesn't always help me. And I think that if I would have removed the pride that I had in my heart in certain situations that I can just think about in the past, if I would have been able to properly remove that, I think that those situations would have turned out a little different. I definitely think there would have been easier conversations that I would have been able to have. I think that there would have been a breakthrough in certain things as far as communication, if there was less pride that I brought to that situation. Because being too prideful keeps you from being vulnerable, right? So let's talk about vulnerability. Vulnerability is an emotion. It's an emotion, but it's paired with an action. So you're actually doing something to show that you're being vulnerable. But it is an emotion that is paired with an action that allows us to allow other people to come in. It allows us to be willing to let down our guards and have a willingness to make peace with the fact that we're humans and that we need help sometimes. We need help, and it's okay to need help. It's okay to need help, but the reality of it is, for myself and for a lot of other people, that it's not easy to ask for help. It's hard. Because if you're anything like me, you don't like the feeling of being a burden to someone else. You don't like the feeling of thinking that you had to depend on someone else. Because of my pride, I don't like the idea of someone thinking in their mind. Let me tell you how messed up this is messed up I'm not going to say messed up. I'm just going to say this is not the right way to think, but this is how I have processed things for years. I never wanted to be the person that thought in my mind that other people were thinking in their mind that I was a burden to them. And that's not because they voiced that to me. That's not because they said you're a burden, that you're no, I made that story up in my mind. And because I made that story up in my mind before it even got to the point of me even communicating with someone, then it never even happens, because I've already decided that I was the burden. No, that's not good, y'all. That's not good. But because we got this, right? I got this. We got this. Even if we got it and we're hanging on to it by a thread, we still got it. It don't matter. As long as I still got it, I got that. But as long as we continue to have that type of mindset, we're creating a narrative that contradicts the idea that we're ready to have someone to come into our lives and to lead us, to guide us, or to come in our lives and to just be a partner, right? Because you see how that is a contradiction. You can't, if you're a person and you're like, yes, I want this, I want a relationship, I want to be connected to someone, I want to do collaboration, even if we're not talking about romantic and personal relationships, just collaborations and things, and I want to go to the next level, I want to do all of these things, but also you have the mindset that, well, I got this, and you're not even willing to open yourself up to the idea of someone else coming in, someone else helping you, someone else connecting with you. If you're not even open to those ideas, then how are you ready for that? You know what I mean? It can't be both ways. You can be prepared to do things by yourself, but if you really want someone to come in, if you really want someone to come into your life and to help you, because if we're going to be honest with yourself, everybody wants someone that can come in and help. We want that, especially if you're someone who had to do it by yourself for so long. You should be tired. Are y'all not tired? Are y'all not tired? Because I'm tired. Look, your girl is tired. I am tired. I would love to have an equal partner. And if I'm being honest, I mean, in some ways, I would say it would be equal at the core values of it, right? But I want someone that can actually come in and take control of the situation, that can come in and be guidance, that can come in and share knowledge, that can come in and help, that can come in and say, listen, you've been doing things this way. Here's an alternative. Here's how I've done it, and I've been successful at doing it this way. And again, think broadly. This doesn't have to be just personal relationships. This can be in collaborations too. Sometimes the missing link to taking whatever it is that we're working on, our projects, our businesses, our brands, to the next level, sometimes the missing link to that is actually connecting and networking with other people. But because you may have been just so used to doing everything independently, inviting another energy to come in, that might be, very hard for you. But you never know until you try. You have to attempt at some things before you can just immediately say, well, it doesn't work for me. I tried, it didn't work. Be able to actually say that you actually gave it a shot before you just shut it down, right? But if that's something that you want, if you know that you want someone to come into your life and to help, you have to be willing to be vulnerable with that person. If you want to have a business partner come in, you have to be able to be a little bit vulnerable in the business aspect of things with that potential person or that networking circle that comes in. You have to be able to be a little bit vulnerable and allow them to come in, and learn how to lay down your pride when it's necessary. Because when you allow the ego to lead, this also leaves room for the potential to alienate other people and create a contradiction. Again, I just said that. Create a contradiction between what we are displaying and what we really need or want. But being too prideful in everything you do can leave people to the impression that you are not capable of teamwork. You're not capable of committing in a relationship and having a partner in a relationship. Because these are the things that you have to show beforehand. These are the things you have to show examples of how you can be vulnerable. Because then it displays, when we're not able to be vulnerable, it displays to others that we are not capable of seeing other perspectives outside of our own either. Because everything just can't be a me thing in terms of when you're trying to bring someone else into your life in whatever aspect that is, whether that's business or personal, networking, just whatever it is. So even though we're working on ourselves in our solo season, this is a perfect time for you to reflect on how we allow other people to play different roles in our life. Remember, the solo season is about reflection and preparation, right? So you're preparing yourself to adjust the things that you've reflected on and identify that those are the things, this has room for growth. This is an area of my life that has room for growth. You're preparing yourself for that. How are you letting people show up for you? How are you connecting with other people? When you potentially go, if you're single and you go into the dating scene, the dating world, and you're talking to other people, how are you displaying your independence, and how are you displaying your capability to allow someone to come in? If you've been single for a few years and you're expressing that to someone, the first thing that they might think is, okay, this person has been doing things by themselves. This person has been single for 3 years now. Okay, she is probably used to things being a certain type of way. How willing is she to allow someone else to come in, and maybe, things might shift. It doesn't mean that you lose sight of who you are at all, but it means that when you open up yourself to someone to come in, things will shift, right? How are you operating in that ego? We want to elevation over ego. All right, let's keep moving along. So at the end of each of these sections, I'm going to give you guys a self-reflection question. So self-reflection question number 1, how or in what ways has my own ego and pride had an effect on the progression of my life? I hope you guys have your journals. How or in what ways has my own ego and pride had an effect on the progression of my life? Okay, let's keep going. We're talking about resentment. So Remember, this is letting go of an unsuccessful error. E.R.A. We talked about ego. R, resentment. Let's talk about the resentment restraints. When you operate in resentment, you will be restrained. Resentment is a big thing, right? Resentment shows us that we can recognize the negative emotions that are attached to experiences where likely we were probably treated in a way that we wouldn't have treated someone else, right? Resentment is the response to a person's choice that they made that ultimately had a negative impact on us. You resent someone because they did this. Someone did this for so long, you began to resent them. You did this because of someone else, and now you resent them for it, right? As we're operating with resentment in our hearts, we're going to feel a lot of different emotions. We're going to feel anger. We're going to feel frustration. We're going to feel disappointment. We're going to feel bitterness. And we're going to feel hard, unresolved feelings that are going in another direction towards another person. They're unresolved. That's why there's resentment there. So the point of this is to resolve those issues so that we can remove that resentment. Resentment has restraints that automatically come with it. You know how they say like batteries included? Resentment has restraints included. I'm telling y'all, it does. And sometimes when we bottle resentment in, we are actually harboring those feelings that need to be heard or acknowledged. Sometimes it's just a matter of being able to get some things out. When you're not able to vocalize things, when you're not able to speak your mind on certain things and you keep holding things in, you're going to begin to resent someone. That's why it's just best to be very transparent and honest and let the chips fall as they will. We have feelings that need to be acknowledged, and the feelings that we believe we need to, these are feelings that we need to have like emotional reparation. I need reparations from this, but I need it in an emotional way because I'm harboring this resentment for whatever it is. Resentment will come in your life and it will challenge your ability to forgive and move forward. What's that? There's a quote that I posted recently. There's that long time quote that's been attached to resentment. Resentment is like drinking poison yourself and waiting for another person to die. It is not going to happen. You're only harming yourself. You drank the poison, you're harming yourself. But you drank the poison and you were waiting for someone else to die. It doesn't make sense, right? So like I said, resentment comes in and challenges your ability to forgive and move forward. But let me tell you something about resentment. Resentment is expensive. Resentment costs a lot. It costs a lot of your energy when you just decide to stay there. But you know what else costs a lot? Forgiveness. Forgiveness is probably even more expensive than resentment. And you don't always offer people your forgiveness that easily, especially depending on the degree to which they hurt you, betrayed you, angered you, frustrated you, whatever it is that they did to you, depending on the severity of that, it's going to be even harder to forgive. And like, listen, like I said, resentment is costly, but forgiveness is expensive. And not many people can afford your forgiveness. They can't afford it because in order for them to afford your forgiveness, there's certain terms that they have to be willing to extend to you. And they can't do it. They don't have the capability. They don't have the means to do it. And or you won't allow them to have the means to do it because you're hanging on. You're holding on to that resentment because you feel justified. So if we know that resentment has a way of holding us hostage and bound to other people, it's important to recognize how and when it became a relevant feeling within us, and what were the contributing factors that began to cause this resentment. What happened? You're feeling resentment towards something. What happened? So I'm gonna toss a couple of things out there. Maybe you felt like you weren't being heard in a certain situation. Those are invalidated feelings. That's a very easy way to begin to resent someone. Because if someone gives us the idea that our feelings are not seen as valid, then we're bound to build up a negative emotional reactions towards that person, because they silenced us. They made us feel like our thoughts and our feelings weren't important. They silenced us and they took away our ability to be heard. So as soon as that happens, bing, we start resenting them. Because the truth of the matter is, we all have to get to a point, and we all have a point that we're trying to get across in different scenarios. But if we can't get our point across, or somehow our point is threatened, then we start to build up that resentment. So invalidated feelings is a huge one. Or maybe here's another one that's very, very common. And this is how I've gotten my feelings hurt plenty times. You have unrealistic expectations of people, of other people. You expect other people to be a certain type of way. Do you know how disappointed you're going to be? You're going to be very disappointed. And you're definitely going to begin to resent someone when you expect them to be a certain type of way and they're not. It would be nice to believe that everyone is capable of spending the same amount of energy towards us, or towards something that involves us, that we're capable of. We would love to believe that in people. We want to see that, right? Because we know ourselves better than anyone else. So we know what we're going to put energy towards. We know that I know that if I tell you I'm going to give something my all, I'm going to give something my all. Whether that's a friendship, a relationship, a business opportunity. If I say I'm going to give you my all, I'm going to give you my all towards it. If I show up as a certain type of friend to you, I'm going to show up as a certain type of friend to you. And I have these expectations that you're going to be that same type of friend back to me. So then when you're not that same type of friend back to me, guess what? Guess what's growing? Guess what's brewing? Guess what's eating up inside of me? Resentment. We want people to match our efforts, match our ways of thinking, match the way we love, match the way we say that we're a friend. We want people to match the core, the core decency that we carry. We want people to match that. It takes some hard lessons and harsh truths to learn that having those expectations of other people will always be a way to disappoint yourself, because some people just don't have the capacity. They just don't have it in them. Or if they have it in them, it's just not that important for them to make room for it at that point. Some people are going to feel burdened by trying to match your efforts. The things that you do, they're going to feel burdened by it. If they feel burdened by it, they don't have the capacity at that time. It's not to say they won't ever have the capacity, but right now, at this point in time, they don't have it. They can't. You may have done all of these things. They can't do that right now because they just don't have the capacity. Some people are just not going to be willing to stretch themselves in order to meet your expectations. So the sooner you realize not to hold who you are as a person and the things that you do as the standard for how other people should operate, and just let them be who you are, the sooner you can understand how they may no longer fit into the character role you expected them to fit in this story that you call life. The sooner you can figure that part out, the sooner you can accept that, the sooner you can decide where to put certain people. You have to learn how to put people where they belong in your life. Everybody is not VIP in your life. Everybody can't be VIP. That's why it's VIP. If everybody in the club could be fit into VIP, they wouldn't have a VIP section. If everybody could afford it, you know what I mean? It'd just be a VIP. VIP is exactly what it is. So you have to figure out how and where to fit people in your life. That becomes something that's going to be very important for you to begin to do, because certain people have to be moved around. Like, they got to be moved to different places in order for you to be able to move to different places. Catch that. Let's keep going. Recurring feelings when you play emotions on repeat. That has to be probably the most common sign of you holding on to resentment. You keep replaying things over and over in your mind. There's an uncontrollable need to play back experiences and your negative emotions that you had during that moment. When someone did something to you, you keep playing that back, playing that back, playing that back. And every time you play it back, you remind yourself of how it made you feel. You get angry all over again. You keep living through that same situation. You keep allowing that person to just have one more conversation with you. And you keep opening up that access. You run it back over and over, trying to understand. Sometimes you even try to justify. I used to do that. I used to try to justify when people were doing me wrong or did me wrong. I tried to justify it, because by me justifying it in some sort of way, that was me giving myself and giving them an excuse to continue to hang on to that connection. So you're trying to justify what you may really never even truly understand. But if we can grasp onto the concept that we can't hold ourselves responsible for understanding why a person made certain decisions in regards to us, and just accept things as is, we can better understand how to cope with it and then release it, instead of being bound and gagged by it. You're not responsible for understanding why someone hurt you. You're not responsible for understanding why they did it. Sometimes people don't even know. They don't even have a great explanation to give you as to why they were a shitty person to you, why they were a shitty friend, why they were a shitty partner. Sometimes they don't have a good explanation to give you, just because they're human. And you know what? That's not the excuse. But it kind of is. Humans do things, and whatever was going on in their mind at that time that they did whatever it was that hurt you, that's something that they have to deal with. You're lucky if you get to understand. If you get the explanation, then you're lucky. I'm not saying you'll never get explanation. You know, it's possible. Consider yourself very blessed to have been able to have someone who can really, really be self-aware in that moment and really be honest with themselves and honest with you and transparent and hold themselves accountable. That's a great character trait. Not everybody gets that. But the restraints placed on us by resentment is something, that resentment that we foster, this is something that can easily be misrepresented as a problem that we are unable to be separated from without hearing certain words or seeing certain actions from people in order to move on. Like, you got to have that conversation. Sometimes we tell ourselves we got to have that closure. We got to have that conversation. We got to know why. That's going to keep you connected to that for far longer than you really necessarily have to if you hold on to that idea. Like you feel like you gotta get an apology. Let me tell you how strong you have to be able to move on in life with something, knowing that someone did something to you and to never get that apology. Do you know how strong you have to? You're very strong to move on with your life knowing that you'll never get that apology. Some of us will never get an apology for certain things. We just won't. That's just how we just won't. So should you, because you never got that apology, should you continue to occupy in resentment because you never got that? Resentment is negative. That's a negative feeling. So if you're waiting on someone to do something very specific, if you're waiting on someone to tell you exactly why, if you're waiting on certain words, if you're waiting on someone to say that they apologize, or if you're waiting for someone to tell you why they did what they did and you're holding on to resentment until you get that, sis, listen, you might be holding on for a minute. You never know. Be prepared to go on with life without getting that apology. That's just how it is. You're not going to always get that. You're not going to always get that. That's just being realistic about it. That's a certain type of freedom when someone can actually give you those things. They can give you the reason why and exactly what they were thinking in that moment. And like, if you can get all of that, kudos to you and that person, but it's just not realistic. And a lot of circumstances are not going to give us that type of freedom. So in the meantime, guess what you have to do? You have to put in the self-work in order to build your mindset up big enough to realize that you are your own freedom in this situation and you don't have to rely on someone else to give that to you. Moving on from something, healing something does not have to be only once someone apologizes, only once someone tells you why, only once someone tells you exactly who else was involved. Doesn't depend on that unless you make it depend on that. And I'm sorry, but I just don't want to live my life that way. And I don't want that for you either. I don't want you to just be waiting on that and have terms and conditions for how you process things in your emotions and start moving in a better way for yourself. I don't want anyone to have that much control over your life. I don't want that for me. I definitely don't want that for you. You have the power to repair the resentment in such a way that builds a trust with yourself. Catch that part. You have the power to repair the resentment in such a way that builds trust with yourself. Trust that you are capable of getting yourself through some of the tougher moments, even if you don't have all parties on board. And then the restoration comes with what you choose to acknowledge and fix. And given certain circumstances, you may be left with only what's going on inside of yourself to repair. Because people ghost people. People continue to lie to you and themselves. There's a lot of different reasons why you may not get what you need to get. So you just can't wait for it. But again, the restoration comes with what you choose to acknowledge and fix and choose to repair within yourself. Those other people, those other individuals, they have to do that for themselves. And it's not your job to make someone be ready to do this. If they're still lying to themselves about something, what makes you think they're going to be honest with you? So here's your self-reflection question for resentment. Does the emotion that I have allowed my resentment to control need to be free? So when you think about anything that you have resentment towards in your life right now, whatever emotion is attached to that resentment, does that need to be freed? The answer should be yes. No one should be saying, no, it doesn't need to be free. Essentially saying, no, you don't need to let go of resentment. No, the answer to that part should be yes. So the second part, this is a two-part self-reflection question. How can I help myself to understand that I can choose to release it myself for the betterment of my life? How can I help myself to understand it? What do you need to do to self-help? All right. Are y'all still with me? Let me get a little bit of this water because we're going to move into the last part of this. We're going to talk about attitude. Are y'all still with me? And then we are going to, I'm going to drop your, the self-discovery journal prompt, of course, and then we'll close it out. We're almost through this, y'all. Almost through. So, third part, attitude adjustments. Here comes attitude entering the chat. As if there isn't already enough negativity embedded in the situation, we allow our attitudes to come in and just knock everything over. They just came in and knocked everything. Attitude comes in and just messes stuff up, right? Attitude comes in because ego or resentment may have left a little side window open. And the attitude just seeped its way in. And when that attitude got in, it gave us access to this feeling that that we can self-justify to make us believe that it's necessary to have an attitude in that moment. Attitude can come in and cause even more havoc by bringing in and merging with the likes of stubbornness and entitlement. Does that sound familiar? I know. Oh my God. This is yeah. I can relate to this. Attitude mingles with misery, and we know what they say about misery. Don't invite her in. So while we're all entitled to feel certain feelings, let's not confuse that past with the belief that having a strong and negative attitude to make your point is the best way when all else fails. Because when you're not getting anywhere, when you're not getting the questions answered that you want answered, or when things aren't going the way, then you just decide to have an attitude. And then when you bring attitude in it, it's just like, that just makes things worse. You may have tried a lot of different approaches to things and people. You've given people an ample opportunity to do the right thing. You may have made a strong and undeniable argument from your perspective. You may have even pleaded with someone. But the fact is that when things don't go the way we anticipate or desire them to go, we are very likely to begin to operate with an attitude in combination to everything else that's going on. And if we feel stuck, if it's like this isn't going anywhere, you get frustrated. Like I'm over it, and then here comes the attitude. But when you bring attitude in it, guess what happens? You're just muddying the waters. Now things really aren't clear, because you've added an attitude. And when you add an attitude, you might inflict an attitude in them. They got an attitude because you got an attitude. Everybody got an attitude. Nothing is being accomplished. Attitude means effective communication skills are out the window. So this will make things harder to see with the necessary scope. Attitude will take control of the situation with the intention of getting its way and making a point. So when you're talking to someone and it's just not going anywhere, and then that attitude clicks on, it's just like at that point it's going to be almost pointless to try for anybody until that attitude is released. Nobody needs to say anything then. Once that happens, it's like this might be the time to shut this down, because nothing productive is going to happen while attitude is here. And attitude comes in and it will hype you up. Attitude has an adrenaline. Attitude comes in and just makes you feel like it's necessary. But attitude is not really on your side. And in that moment, it's doing everything it can to seize the day at that point. Attitude wants you in a place of what you think is control. You think that because you have an attitude, you are taking control of the situation and someone's just going to give in. And sometimes that does work, but was it done effectively? So attitude wants you in a place of what you think is control because of the justified anger, but really that's just a ploy to self-sabotage and steal your joy. And how crazy is it to think that you have somehow become the key accomplice to the major heist of stealing your joy and ruining your day? And you did that yourself. You played a role in that. When you allowed your attitude to come in and take over, you played a role in releasing your joy, taking over the day, messing up you know what I mean? You played a role in that. That's why you have to think about that a certain type of way. That's why we talk about mindset. When you begin to look at it, if you look at it, shift it, and think about it differently, you'll realize how some of the things, not all of the things, but some of the things could really have a totally different spin on it based on how you decide, how you choose to look at it. Checking your attitude at the door of any situation is going to be necessary for the most effective way to communicate how you truly feel. You can't really tell someone how you really feel and have an attitude at the same time. You can, it is possible to do, but what I'm saying is it's not going to be effective. This is going to require patience within yourself, toward other people, and towards whatever the circumstances is. Patience. Attitude will come in and tear everything up. It's not beneficial. All you're proving is that you can hold on to anger. You're proving that you can hold on to anger and that you're capable of contributing to making yourself unhappy in that moment while you're getting pissed off because someone else made you unhappy, but you're taking part of that too, sis. That's the part that I need you to understand. So here's your self-reflection question about attitude. How does your attitude affect how you make decisions and how you communicate those decisions to other people? So it all comes down to this. The ending of ego, resentment, and attitude as an era in our lives should motivate us. It should motivate us to challenge ourselves in those very sensitive pressure points that we have. Those can be misconstrued and mishandled. But ending this era, it should motivate us to take on a better and healthier way to manage those life stressors. So when you reverse what we so easily activate in tough circumstances, and listen, that might be hard to do. It's not always going to be our go-to plan. And it's very likely that we will use one of these to somehow justify our decisions and actions while not necessarily being in the best position to do this. That's a very important part of this passage. Let me go here again. Let me read this again. Reversing what we so easily activate in tough circumstances might be hard to do, and it won't always be our go-to plan when emotions are heightened. In fact, it's very likely that we will use one of these to somehow justify our decisions and actions while not necessarily being in the best position to do this. So in other words, you're in the position of just being wrong, sis. You're just wrong. You're just wrong, and you need to be aware of that, and you need to hold yourself accountable for that. And you need to figure out a better way other than operating in ego, resentment, and attitude. We need to find better ways to handle these different life stressors. But ending this era is what some of us are just steps away from being able to do successfully by way of using critical thinking skills, aka adjusting the mindset. Critical thinking skills, self-awareness, and reflection. That's a recipe for being able to move out of this space of ego, resentment, and attitude. Hopefully, we're growing and learning and developing an actual capability to see things from a bigger and more productive perspective. And that's what I was talking about, like when we were talking about resentment. Being able to see that you actually have the power to release this resentment if you choose to, and you don't have to wait on someone to apologize. You don't have to wait on someone. It doesn't mean you got to continue. You don't have to fuck with them no more, but you just have to realize that you can move past that if you want it. So hopefully we're growing and learning and developing actual capability to see things from a bigger, more productive perspective, a more powerful and self-serving perspective. Self-serving in a positive way, right? Self-serving in a way that ultimately manifests peace and calm in our lives and not in a selfish, self-absorbed way. We want a perspective that teaches us how to show up fully prepared to communicate effectively and to understand that our feelings are still valid regardless of what any opposition might suggest, but that when we end this quote unquote era, we are making a conscious effort to remove things that we are clearly contributing to a situation that hinders it from positive growth. We eliminate the ego, repair the resentment, and adjust our attitudes. All right. So that was a lot. And I want you guys to go and I want you guys to read this. The link will be in the show notes. I really want you guys to take that and just think about it. I don't think anyone is exempt from this. I think that we all have moments where we are prone to operating in one of those, if not all, in certain situations. So while we're in our solo season, these are just some of the types of things that we need to be working on. These are things that are going to help us. So that when we come out of this season, we're going to come out with okay, I acknowledge this. You know how to handle things better. You know how to have more productive conversations. You've learned some things. And we're going to put some of these things to use. When we do the self-work, then come the tests. All right. So before we close this out, you guys know I'm going to give you guys your our self-discovery journal prompt for this entry. So while I get my let's see, which one are we going to do? I think I narrowed it down. I had two, but we're going to do one. So get your pens and your journal ready, and let's get ready to throw this self-discovery question out there. All right, here's your self-discovery question. I hope you guys have a good journal. You know what? You guys should have a Thoughts of a Blog Queen podcast journal. Also, fun fact, if you are new to just kind of being on my platform, I actually do have Thoughts of a Blog Queen journals. They are in my storefront, which is temporarily closed. But I am trying to gear up to open that up. So hopefully I'll be able to get those journals back out there. Cute little black little journals that can fit in your purse. Because I'm the type of person, I will journal any and everywhere, y'all. It don't matter. I could be sitting at a restaurant. I will have my little journal with me and something will come to me and I need to get my thoughts out. But anyways, Here is your self-discovery journal prompt. Am I focusing more on what my life looks like than what it feels like? Am I focusing more on what my life looks like than on what it feels like? I thought that was I narrowed it down to this one, another one, but we're just going to do one. But I thought it was very appropriate for what we're talking about because, we are focused on how things may appear to the outward world, what our relationship status looks like, some of the things that we have, but we need to be focused on how we feel, because you can have all of the things that the checklist, right? The quote unquote, the checklist says that we're supposed to have, and still feel shitty inside. So I don't know about you, but it is very important for me to have internal peace before I have all of those outwardly things. I have to live my life and be okay with myself. I have to be happy within myself. That is far more important to me than obtaining anything tangible or my life reflecting to look a certain way so that other people can think it is this way or that way. That's not as important to me as what my life actually feels like, what's really going on, because I want my behind the scenes and under the table, I want all of that to be calm and peaceful too. So that when I come to my community and I'm like, yeah, everything, I'm at peace. I really want to mean that. I don't want to say that just because it sounds good. I really want to be at peace. That's goals. When you ask me what are some of my goals, I want a peaceful life. While people are talking about dream cars and big houses and 6 figures, all those are cute, but I actually want a peaceful life. Stress kills. Do y'all know that? That's a real thing. Stress kills. I don't want to invite drama into my life. I don't want to invite people into my life that are going to bring drama into my life, because my life happens to be drama-free. Like for real, drama-free. So I want it to stay that way. I want my life to feel good. I want to be mentally okay. I don't want to have all of the things and be mentally fucked up. I'm sorry to say it like that, but it's real. So what are we focusing on? Are we focusing more on what life looks like or what it feels like? All right. So you guys, that's it. That's another blog breakdown. Thank you guys for hanging in there with me. Again, you guys, I love you so much. I appreciate you guys for tuning in and just spending this time with me. The continued support. Shout out to everybody that supports the platform, that supports Thoughts of a Blog Queen in any way possible. Shout out to all of you. I appreciate it. I really, really do. And another thing that I would really, really appreciate is if you have not already left your girl a review. When this entry ends, when it stops, go over and leave a review for your girl. Let me know what you like about the entry or what you like about the podcast in general. Something that stood out to you. Let me know your thoughts. I appreciate it. It helps me tremendously when you leave reviews, but I love to hear your positive thoughts. I appreciate it. I appreciate everyone that shares by word of mouth, that actually shares it. South Carolina, New York, and Florida, shout out to you all. You streamed the podcast the most for July. We'll see what August is talking about, because I believe North Carolina and Texas were kind of in there for a couple of months in the top 3, along with South Carolina is always up in there. So I got some people around that are tuned in. I don't know who they are, but they're listening. I'm viewing the downloads, but I'm grateful. Nonetheless, I appreciate it. So I'm going to go ahead and wrap this up again. Happy Self-Care Sunday. If you are tuned into this entry on the day that it actually dropped, If not, whatever day it is, I hope you're having a great and successful week, a productive week. I pray good things come your way. I pray positive energy towards you. I pray that you have everything that you need in this moment, and I pray that you will only continue to receive the things that you need. So until next time, you guys, I love you, and peace and blessings.